Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I would like to begin with the greeting of Nur alaikum and welcome my Sheikh, Murshid, brother and friend, Sheikh Wahid Azal of the Fatimiyya Sufi order for part 16 in these series of dialogues and conversations that we've been having. And I'm so happy to have Sheikh Wahid back for this part 16 after a while. And there's so much to discuss, so much to talk about. And we will begin this with Bismillah and Nur alaikum. Welcome, Sheikh.
Alaikum Nur and Bismillah. Let me begin this podcast with a prayer for revolution that I just translated from my own 15th unity of the Arabic Bayan, because this seems to have gotten a lot of responses. I'll read the English translation and then later I may make a short little recording of myself reciting both the English and the Arabic, but I'll read the English here. Glorified art thou, my God. To thee belongs the praise, O compassionate over all things and their mercifier. Thou granteth revolution to whom thou will, and thou preventeth it from whom thou will. And thou givest the revolution to whom thou will, and taketh it away from whom thou will. And thou ennobleth whom thou will, and thou abaseth whom thou will. And thou destroyeth whom thou will, and thou upraiseth whom thou will. And thou bringeth down whom thou will, and thou enliveneth whom thou will. And thou killeth whom thou will, and thou separateth whom thou will. And thou enrichest whom thou will, and thou makest to abide whom thou will, from whom thou will. And thou illuminateth whom thou will, from whom thou will, to whom thou will. In thy grasp is the essences of the existence of all things. Thou maketh and breaketh whatsoever thou willest by thy cause command. Be and it is. Verily thou art capably powerful. So run out and destroy, O God, the aid invoke, those filthy rich and all the arrogant upon the earth, and purify the dominion of thy earth from them by thy light, and by thy strength, and thy power, and thy grandeur, and thy might, and thy prestige, and thy influential supremacy, and thy compelling, and thy wrath, and thy revolutionariness, for the sake of implementing thy decree of the 11th gate of the 9th unity of the Bayan, so that thy creation may live up to the acme of those possibilities that thou hast set over it. There's no other God but thee. Glorified art thou, and high art thou, and splendorous be the splendor of thy cause command. Verily thou encompasseth all things, and verily by thy mercy thou art vast. Amen.
Amen.
So that is a prayer by me in the 15th unity of the Bayan, under the gate where the command is that in this time, the accumulation, the over-accumulation of wealth, the hoarding of wealth is now haram. And this was also the case in early Islam, where if you read the Quran carefully, you know, the early Muslims were not hoarders of wealth. They created a community that in many ways, by current definitions, can be called quasi-socialistic, right? Where even the wealth of the Prophet was equal to other members of the community. Unfortunately, because of the things that happened after the passing of the Messenger of God, things went south, and class and caste reared its ugly head back again into the Ummah, and we are where we are today. Nevertheless, in this time, if this humanity is to continue to survive, and if this gravy train that is off the rails is to be stopped, we must, as a collective species, consider doing things differently than what we have been doing thus far. And that means, regardless of these arguments between people about whether the Soviet experiment failed or not, humanity needs to seriously consider moving into a more equitable way of doing its political economy around the world. Since this system is global and is not localized any longer, and since this system is a system of waste, overconsumption, and degradation of the environment, humanity has no other choice. If we don't stop this gravy train, as the science itself is proving, and as empirical experience of people who are experiencing the current heat wave in the north of the equator are experiencing for themselves, this world will end. Now, some people accuse me of sounding like a doom and gloom prophet straight out of the Old Testament. Well, maybe maybe that is a model to look at, because these stories in the scriptures tell us of a humanity that has also been in its own time wayward. And every time it has gone off the rails, the Lord of the universe has chastised it and brought things back into equilibrium. Not for the sake of merely a tit for tat between God and humanity, but because when there is a balance that goes out of balance, right, the creator of all things has no choice than to interfere and intervene in the life of the world in order to set this balance straight. And this time is now. We have reached this point at this time, at this moment, where if we do not stop, if we do not, put things back in a proper, balanced, equitable, and equitous way on this planet, not just for the humans of this place, but also for other creatures and life forms that are, living side by side with us, whether we're talking about the animals, the plants, the bacteriological life form, but also I will go on record and say the jinn. If we don't do this, right, our planet will cease. We will go the way of the dinosaurs. It is as simple as that. Now, the captains of industry and the uber capitalists and plutocrats can dismiss this kind of thought and dismiss people like me as crazy and all the rest of it. But as you're all experiencing right now, and as most of the Northern Hemisphere is experiencing like that, what you are experiencing in these heat waves is only the beginning. What humanity experienced over the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic is only the beginning. There's more coming. You can take that to the bank. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue on this track and destroy yourselves and everything else in this world, which is the ultimate sin conceived, that kind of destructiveness? And it is the hallmark of what it means to be satanic. Or are you going to stop, think, and maybe find a way and a means out of this? We offer a means out of this. The Nur, the Fatimiyya Sufi order, is not only a spiritual ecclesia or brotherhood or sisterhood, but it is also, we also offer a political program. And this political program is a spiritualized form of green socialism. That means that we are environmentally conscious completely, but we are also seeking to redistribute the wealth in this world. And the wealth redistribution in the world will not happen until the power and the wealth of the uber wealthy on this planet is brought to heel. That means that it requires some form of a revolution, violent or otherwise is irrelevant, but it requires stopping these people from hoarding the wealth, taking their money and their assets into offshore where they cannot be scrutinized or taxed, etc. That needs to stop. There needs to be an equitable redistribution. And then on top of this, as you're experiencing yourself and your friends are experiencing, we're living in a society, especially in the Anglo-Saxon West, whether America, Australia, the UK, Canada, New Zealand, etc., where lawlessness has become the norm and the paradigm in every conceivable way. While these people and their systems preach the rule of law, preach democracy, preach equality of everybody under the law, the fact of the matter is that if you have the money, the means, or the connections, you're untouchable. You can commit any crime. You can murder millions and get away with it, as has happened in the United States, where, for example, if anybody is following these January 6 hearings in Congress, Donald Trump was 100% guilty of inciting a mob against the official legislative branch of the United States government. But will he be brought to account? I'm not holding my breath. They can have all of these hearings as much as they want. There is more than sufficient evidence existing at the moment for the US Department of Justice to convict and indict Donald Trump and his co-conspirators in what went on January 6th, but they won't do it. So these hearings continue. These are basically ornaments placating a certain constituency in those societies from basically realizing that they have no share of the power in that country. I would like to be proven wrong, but I'm not holding my breath, because the behavior of the current administration on other matters, like declaring a emergency climate change situation on the part of the Biden administration, all these other things, is proving that the Democrats are very much just a wing of the system and always have been. Nevertheless, we are in an emergency situation and this gravy train needs to be stopped. So what are people going to do? There is a way out. We offer it. Look into us. Come join us. Together, we will transform this planet. Guaranteed.
Thank you, Sheikh, for expressing that, because what I have been seeing right now in the world, especially here in the Northeast American apparatus, there is that lawlessness. The crime and inflation at all major cities in the Anglo-Saxon world, including here in America, is out of control. The law enforcement cannot do their jobs. People are going out and just doing what they're doing, hurting people, robbing stores, robbing other things, and because they know there is no consequence. All of the system that is here, whether the environment getting trashed, people throwing trash everywhere. I go to the park, there's trash all over the place. Crime is all over the place. The police, law enforcement, the systems of place that are there to help people are not there. So now, right now, you're in a position, if somebody could do something to you and you call the police, there's nothing they can do.
Mm.
And that is basically the system that we're dealing with right now, where if you're rich, if you have money, if you have connections, you could get away with everything. Like we see the leadership of the Western world, what they did to so many countries within the last 10 to 20 years. And they're walking
Longer,
around
much longer than that.
much more longer than
Yeah.
that. And, as you corrected me, and these people are just walking around like thinking that they're saints and angels and doing book tours and public speaking tours. But you and I know the truth is different. And I'm only 30 years old, and you have seen this world in a much more extensive perspective. And it's basically, the way that I look at it is, my generation, Sheikh, and the generations that will come after me, they will not survive if they don't take action of what's going on, where there's faltering in relationships. People don't want to deal with each other anymore. The crime, the lawlessness, the environment getting destroyed, wicked people getting away with their evil and not being held accountable. And the list goes on and on and on. And people have to know what the Nur FSO stands for is against all of this. It's environmentally conscious. It gives basically the respect to all beings on this earth, the equal distribution of all things, which early Islam taught us before the corruption came. So I'm so honored and humbled just to be on this path with Sheikh Wahid Azal and to spread this message to humanity in a time where it's mostly needed. And if people fail to take any heed to it or take any action, then we already see what's going on with the weather, with the crime, with the lawlessness, with the relationships, the environment. Nothing makes sense anymore, honestly.
No, because humanity is lost this way. But the Bayan predicted this. Bayan did say that in a time such as this, faith would be cut off to all. And as an example, I just stopped counseling the local Muslims here in Brisbane. And I did this for a conscious person. Number one, it was eating away too much of my time. And number two, I found that a lot of these people are so, so wayward, and that their Islam is just has become just an ornament. And you're talking even about people who pride themselves of being very hardcore Sunni Salafists of one form or another. So for example, they are very conscious about going somewhere or eating something if it's halal or not. Yet you find in their marriages unbelievable forms of infidelity occurring, women and men alike. And some of the very most basic moral foundations of akhlaq, of ethics, of Islamic ethics is just gone. It doesn't exist. The hypocrisy is of such magnitude that it only will take the hand of God itself to change any of this. And so I basically said, okay, enough of this. I have a child to take care of. I have other things to take care of. I have an order to expand. So things to write and translate, as I have been doing for you all. So I basically stopped counseling these people, and that's that. And I have told a lot of these people that, look, everything that you seek is in the book. All you have to do is follow it, as difficult as it is. Yes, I understand that living in a corrupt, decadent society as the one that we're living in globally currently, where people are daily bombarded by over-sexualized things, is going to lead to a situation where people are going to wander from their marriages, from one emotional disaster to the next, from one bedroom to the next. So your solution is there. I can sit here until the cows come home and psychoanalyze you and psychopathologize you and give you cutesy platitudes and all this, that, and the other thing. But if you don't implement it, or if you don't reach the perspective about what is wrong and see the bigger picture and then bring that bigger picture into your own individual life, I'm wasting my time and you're wasting your own time.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. What is the problem is that the majority of imams in mosques today, everywhere, and I saw this also in Germany, in a variety of mosque contexts, Shia, Sunni, Sufi, otherwise, don't seem to be equipped to handle their congregations. So they will go onto the, on Fridays and they give their elaborate khutbahs and sometimes not so elaborate khutbahs that doesn't really inspire, or if it inspires, it only inspires for that particular moment. And then everybody goes out of the mosque and goes back to the dunya as usual and does exactly the same thing that they were doing before they came for the Friday congregation. How is this different? Like, if Muslims pride themselves as being different than Christians, how is this any different than a Catholic going to confession and confessing a medley of sins to their priest, right? Saying a couple of Hail Marys and Our Fathers, leaving the church and going back again and doing exactly this, committing the same sins as before. What is the difference? It's the same thing. Nifaq, right? As the Quran and especially as Surah Al-Baqarah constantly emphasizes, is a disease of the mind, right? And it is the mind is the source of all of this stuff. And if you cannot control your mind, in my opinion, then one should even cease praying. Because what is the purpose of praying if you cannot control the mind and focus your utmost attention into the All High for that prayer? If your mind is wandering, if you're in the salat, and as you're bending and prostrating, etc., you're having all kinds of warped thoughts go through your head, or you're scolding your wife in your mind, or you're scolding your coworker, or you're in an argument in your mind during that. What is that? This is a form of kufr. It is a form of shirk. You are not concentrated on God. You're not engaging in Tawheed. You're basically involved with yourself. And this is what the Quran is teaching when it is talking about the nafs al-amara bil-su, the soul inclining or commanding to evil, right? The Quran doesn't mention anything about the erasure of the ego, the annihilation of the ego. These are talking points that emerge later on. And as far as I'm concerned, it is impossible while you're in a body and occur in spatial temporality to erase the ego completely. That is not the point of the exercise. As the Quran is very explicit, the point is to refine the ego, right? And the word ego in Arabic is the same word as soul. So nafs, what Jung uses as the term anima, right? So when you move through the trajectory of the various stages of the ego's refinement, it talks first about the soul commanding to evil, and then it ends at the nafs al-raziyah wal-marziyah, the soul inclining to peace and repose at its end, right? And then God in the first person tells that soul who has come into its repose, فَأَدْخَلِي فِي جَنَّتِي, so enter my paradise, right? So it's seldom that you find God talking in the first person. There's always the plural we that is used in the Quran. But in this particular instance, and a few others, very small others in the examples in the Quran, God talks in the first person. أَدْخَلَ فِي جَنَّتِي. The way I have interpreted this verse is as follows. When that first person is used, it is not really talking about a God that is distant or an all high is distant. It's talking about yourself, because that paradise that you have entered is your own ego refined. So it is that individuated I, the fully individuated I of the true divine ego that then inhabits that person from that point forward, right? There's nothing here about destruction of the ego, annihilation and erasure of ego. That will never happen. You can spend your entire lifetime in meditation and not make an inch of progress towards that end, because that is not the divine economy of things. The divine economy of things, as that Hadith Qudsi says, I was a hidden treasure and I desired to be known, therefore I created creation in order to be known. So that means that even your ego is a locus of the manifestation of the All High to know itself. But that ego requires refinement for you to be a receptive vehicle for the realization of the All High, of its eternal I. You understand? So this is the kind of space that the FSO, that the Nur is seeking to create for people. We're not making demands upon humanity of a kind that they cannot fulfill, like certain philosophies and systems have been making. We're making very basic, very commonsensical demands. Stop destroying the earth. Stop abusing yourself number one. The abuse of self is the place from which all other things emerge. And this is why in the 19 commandments, it is commanded, love yourself first, and only then can you love your neighbor, because a heart that hates itself can never love anyone outside of itself. But that love for self, that self that we're talking about, is that higher self, is that first person I of that verse in the Quran that tells you, enter my paradise. So once you have entered that paradise, أَدْخَلُوا فِي جَنَّتِي, of my eternal paradise, then you have truly loved yourself, because then you have become the locus of the hidden treasure, loving to know itself and creating creation. You understand? So once we're at that place, then we are at an empowered place with the power of the infinite at our disposal, in our hands, as its vehicle to change the world. Right? It is not the soul commanding to evil, the soul that is having an argument with his wife or its co-worker or its creditor or its child or whatever while doing the salat. It's that soul that is completely focused, where its identity with the spirit of truth is now merged. And that spirit of truth is operating within that person. It doesn't mean that you are joining or uniting with the Godhead in totality. That is impossible and can never happen for any person, because there are layers and hierarchies and infinite levels of being. You can never attain the level of the essence. But the point of realizing, of self-realization, is reaching that first person I of the Jannati, of my paradise within yourself, creating that garden of Eden within yourself. And that doesn't necessarily even mean what common, contemporary psychology and psychopathology, that whole science, psychotherapeutic science contemporary, is saying. Because as we are seeing, this over-medication of humanity that is happening on the part of that particular industry through the pharmaceutical industry is not getting people to that paradise of themselves. It's moving them further and further and further. It's desensitizing people. Sensitization is as it were, it's the nerves of God. When you are sensitive and oversensitive, but you have harnessed your sensitivity, you are actually the tentacles of the All High, the spirit of truth itself at all times, right? This is what people need to understand about the nature of the spirit, where all of these teachings have been available, but unfortunately, for most of this time, it has been the reserve of an elite. So we want to change that. What was formerly esoteric, we will now make the exoteric of our path. We will offer these teachings to these people, provided that these people actually sit down and do it in the safety of their own lives and within the enclave and the parameters of their daily day-to-day lives, because these things are not realized by merely sitting in a cave for 40 days or 30 years or however long. They happen in the real world, which is one of the things that one segment of the Sufi tradition has always emphasized. There's a term, they call it khalwat al-anjuman, which means retreat within society, which means you walk the spiritual path within society, within the multitude of society, but you are retreated within yourself from it. So you are in the world, but not of it simultaneously, right? To get to that place, right, then you begin to observe the world, you begin to learn about the world, you begin to see the dynamic, you begin to see the hand of the spirit in every little thing that is going on. And then the spirit is constantly communicating with you. Then you begin to realize the meaning of why we call the All High the friend, and why God is your friend and is the ultimate friend, because you're constantly being guided and you have a true relationship, or what certain Christians talk about when they say having a personal relationship with Christ. That is available to us. It is available to all humanity by any definition that you want to posit. You call it Christ, the Atman, whatever, it is available to humanity. And this is the inheritance that all people need to appropriate for themselves. And this reality is the basis from which we want to build a theophanocratic green socialist order on the world, inshallah ta'ala wa subhan. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sheikh. And that's absolutely wonderful. I cannot stress enough that the things that you have said. And it's so important for humanity to take heed to these words and this gift of knowledge that is being imparted. And it reminds me of the Persian poet Omar Khayyam, who says that I myself am heaven and hell. So right now, humanity has kind of put themselves in this held position where I see a society that's lawless, over medicated, like you said. They're all in a rush to get somewhere. They have no patience. They're not respecting each other, the environment. People are just doing what they're doing, thinking that they're going to get away with everything and there's going to be no consequence to their actions. There's no faithfulness in relationships. I see the communities here, the religious communities, even here, the masjids here. You could go and attend the Sufi mosque or the Sunni gathering or whatever is going on, and nobody's following anything. They're doing the khutbahs, they're doing everything. They dress nice for Jummah and do everything, but as soon as they go outside, they go back to their same habits that they were doing before they even came in. So humanity has a lot of work to do. And once your heart and mind becomes in sync with the environment and things around you, then you begin to see the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in somebody's smile, in the birds, in the trees, and the beauty of this creation that we're surrounded with. And honestly, ever since I've been with the Nur FSO, that has actually gotten more better and better and better for me every day by day, with the light of the Sheikh that is always upon me, the light and the prayers of my Murshid, Sheikh Wahid Azal. And not only that, but doing the spiritual practices that you are given by your Murshid. So with any path, whether it's Sufism or anything else, you have to do the practices and you have to implement all of the things that you are being guided, such as the 19 commandments of the Nur FSO. You have to abide by all of that. And when you truly, from the heart, abide and follow all of that, the commandments, the spiritual practices, then you will see that light in your life increasing day by day, which will protect you from your enemies. You will get the God realization that you're looking for, the I, the redefined ego. So I myself am a testimony of having that aspects of know thyself coming in my heart. So I thank Sheikh Wahid Azal for the great work that he is doing, and even with the translating of the Bayan, which I know in our lifetime that will be accomplished, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Yeah, but we are, as the Quran says, we are just a warner. We seek neither recompense nor thanks. This is lillah. This is for God. That is who I work for. That's my boss. Yeah. So, and she's a great boss to work for. So, you put your finger on something very important here that I think should be underscored, is that the religion of truth for most people out there is taken as a form of identity and socialization.
Yeah.
And it is basically one of many things out there that people use to fill the emptiness within themselves without addressing the emptiness itself. And this means that religion, mosque, church, synagogue, ashram, whatever, is a product. So it is a product, it has become a product among many others. That means that that spirit of truth that should be pulsating and transforming people with mere contact isn't present. And this fact needs to be contemplated upon and thought about by people. Why is that? Well, the why is very obvious. We're living in a world, in a society that seeks to turn everything that it touches and gazes upon into a commodity and transactionalizes everything that comes its way. This paradigm needs to be broken. If we cannot stop the transactionalization of our views of things, because let's face it, the exchange of things is only occurring within a dynamic of a consensus, right? And only that, it's just one thought amongst other. It's just one paradigmatic ideation amongst a multitude, right? And it could cease tomorrow. But once that ceases, right, when things such as the religion of truth, other people, etc., we stop looking at people from the perspective that they are things that that have a monetary or a value of exchange. When we stop thinking from that perspective, then we begin to look at things from the perspective of God. That doesn't mean that things in themselves don't possess value, but that value is beyond what the materialist transactional mentality is positing about that thing. And this is why capitalism, in many ways, is an inversion of eternal truths. Yes, all things have value, right? All things have value. And there are scales of value, of course, with God. But what capitalism does by materializing that, right, and inverting its true metaphysical and spiritual thrust, right, is absolutely satanic. And this is also one of the meanings where we have that the devil is the ape of God. And if we take capitalism or neoliberal capitalism as a singular, right, we're seeing that it is attempting to ape God in every conceivable way, the actions of God. And this is why this system is the system of the Antichrist. No question about it. And why, if we are to survive as a species and not fall into the trap and not make the devil right, when the devil tells God at the beginning of a creation, why you're creating a being that will wreak destruction, I will be the enemy to humanity. We have fallen into the paradigm of becoming like the devil, that archetypal devil, the humanity collectively. And this paradigm needs to be broken. I say this to a lot of Muslims on a daily basis. I bring evidences from the Hadith and the Quran constantly to these people. I explain these things. I use metaphor, symbolism, etc. And all of them, shake their hands. But then, for some reason, the pull of that society, of this society and its corruption, is a lot stronger magnetically. And this is why, until people accept that they have to do the suluka ilallah, the wayfaring towards God in an authentic sense, making that bay'ah with a sheikh and listening to the instructions of that sheikh and implementing the practices, right? All of this is just very nice sounding platitudes without any further effect. And that's why I stopped, basically counseling these folks.
Right. And I know exactly what you mean, Sheikh. It's the importance right now where humanity is in a state where it's corrupted beyond repair. I do see that even here in my respective area. When I visited Pakistan, I saw the same thing where people are actually practicing their cultural tribal customs and values more than basically what Islam is teaching you. So I'm seeing that all over the place where people are just not respecting each other genuinely. And you're right, there is, at this point, humanity is too far gone, and there has to be some kind of a divine intervention, because the elite are getting more richer and richer. The poor are getting more poor and poorer. Even my home country, the dollar is now worth like 230 rupees, $1. And it's going the same way that Sri Lanka is going, and all these other countries which are declining. People have no future. The youth are on drugs. They're on alcohol. They have no jobs, no futures. There's no monetary value of anything. While you have this elite Anglo-Saxon of the world, whether it's the European aristocrats or what we have here in North America, that are just hoarding all of the world's wealth. And there has to be equal distribution, because anything that goes out of bounds and out of limits, that's when destruction will come. It might not come in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, but eventually that wrath of God will fall down upon you, just like how it has on previous civilizations.
It is already ongoing. What do you think the COVID is? While people are sitting endlessly speculating whether it was manufactured in a Chinese lab or from a bat, etc., the issue is as clear can be for me. Go back to your scripture, and not just the Abrahamic scripture, also go to the Far Eastern scriptures. They also say exactly the same thing. Pandemics are the domain of the spirit. And this humanity has gone too far off the right path. And so how is the spirit supposed to get its attention without something as of this magnitude? And COVID has targeted the rich and poor alike. What other proof is needed that God is acting right now?
That's absolutely right, Sheikh. And even right now, what we're seeing with inflation and how people are suffering here. I walk around here every day in the morning time, in the afternoon time, and people are suffering mentally. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen eventually, where things are getting more expensive. I see a father with his spouse and kids and all that stuff, and I'm thinking, just where is this world going to go? What kind of future are these kids going to have? And we're surrounded by leadership and policies and organizations that preach good stuff, but at the end, nobody's implementing anything to help humanity or to help each other when the time really comes down to it. So you're right. People have to get their act together. And if not, then that divine intervention, and when it comes, it will come heavy, starting with what we saw in COVID with the world shutting down. So I believe the next 5 to 10 years are extremely sensitive. And I just hope, Sheikh, that within my lifetime, I could see that peace implement, and I will continue to labor towards that with what the Nur FSO has equipped me with.
Inshallah ta'ala, we'll see what happens, because the choice is obvious. And the choice is this: either collectively, or at least a significant portion of humanity who can influence events, makes that turn, or this planet and all life upon it will cease. These are the choices. And this isn't doom and gloom prognostication. The science is telling us this clear cut. Now, certain people, for example, a lot of evangelical fundamentalist Christians, look at this with glee, because this brings evidence of their quote unquote rapture, which is, from the point of view of authentic Christian theology, a heresy. Because humanity has a duty towards the All High to take care of the earth and the creatures under her, not to destroy it. So these people, in my opinion, are heretics, and they are of the negation. They're of the naf, and they are not following the path of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, by any means of the imagination. The Christ who walked 2,000 years ago took care of the earth and the creatures under it, and showed the respect on behalf of his Father to these creatures, not sought their destruction. What kind of religion is that? These people are following the devil, the shaitan, billah. They are not following Jesus Christ. So they are also on notice. Clean up your act, go back to your own scriptures, follow what the Gospels say as they say it, not what your pastors say or what these crazy heretical theologies of prosperity theology, etc., are telling you, because those are all heretical paths. Jesus was not a capitalist. Jesus was not an American patriot or anything like that. It goes without saying, right? But if you read the New Testament, that's the fact, right? What are these people following?
Well, Sheikh, that's interesting, because the Jesus, peace be upon him, that we are following is the one that went into the temple and whipped the money changers. And that is the Isa alayhi salam, the Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, that made sure that everyone was treated equally, from Mary Magdalene to the low status people of society to other people, and punishing those people that were hoarding the wealth and stealing the wealth. And what we're seeing right now with these preachers in America, and like every other place has like a church, because a lot of them, they find it as a financial incentive in America. It's a financial incentive for them. It's not about Christ or God or helping people. It's about for them to get into positions of power and influence, have money around them, and live a good, lavish life, traveling around, doing what they're doing in the name of God, supposedly. But
these people
which God are they serving?
Well, they're not. These people are the Pharisees, scribes, and the Herods of today. These people are the ones that persecuted the early Christians.
Right.
That is who these people are. They're not the followers of Christ. Right. Just like many Muslims, I say this to them as well. They resemble the Quraysh, the pagan idolaters of the Bani Umayyah. They resemble the Abu Sufyans and Hinds and Abu Lahabs, etc. Lanatullah alayhim. They don't follow that model, that paradigm that the early Muslims were following, of equal distribution, respect for each other, love for each other, care for each other. This is the other thing with a lot of Muslims. A lot of Muslims sit and talk all high and mighty and quote endless hadith and verses from the Quran, but when it comes to actually taking care of their fellow brothers and sisters who may be suffering, who may be under tremendous pressure, no one cares.
That's exactly right. And just look at if you look at the Arab royal families of the Middle East and the Gulf, if they were truly the representatives of the two holy mosques and Islam and all that stuff like they claim to be, they're all worth trillions of dollars, probably more than that. And if they followed the Islamic law of zakat for the people of North Africa and the Middle East and Iran and all those places that we see, Pakistan, they could help every poor family, homeless person 100 times
Exactly.
over and still
Absolutely.
have enough money to live for 10 lifetimes. But these people are hypocrites.
They are not only that. Look what they have done to the Haram. Look what they have done to Mecca. They have turned it into a, something in between Mordor and Las Vegas.
Yes.
Astaghfirullah al-Azim. I mean,
Astaghfirullah.
do these people not think for a moment? I mean, I learned about this a few years ago that right across the street from the Masjid al-Haram, there's a mall right across the street. And within one of the boutiques of this mall is a Paris Hilton lingerie shop in Mecca.
Yes, that's right.
So
Right.
what, I mean, do the Muslimin don't stop to think for a minute that this is not the Hajj anymore. This is something else. And that these kuffar and mushrikeen, ladun Allah wa duna el-din, that is the house of Saud, have basically turned the house of God into the very thing it was in the Jahiliyyah. And just as Jesus said the same thing about the scribes and Pharisees in the temple, this paradigm has reoccurred, and now it is in Mecca itself. So we are, or they are rather, they are the Jahiliyyah. They are the return of that very paradigm of the Jahiliyyah that existed at the beginning of Islam.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And being here in the Philadelphia area, Sheikh, I saw within the last 10 to 15 years timelines, you could say, where a lot of these Arab students were coming from Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And these people were not only getting $2,000 to $3,000 a month pocket money salary, but they were also being paid for to go to the top Ivy League schools in Philadelphia area. So the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of these people, they got their grooming from a Western point of view because they know they were going to send them back and they were going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And that's why Islam and those regions are in the condition that they are. Just like even in England, you have the Sheikhs of Sandhurst. You have that. You have the people here. So they're all being groomed by that mindset of the capitalistic anti-Islamic mindset. And they are becoming the leaders of tomorrow in the Islamic world. Just
Not
like in
just
Pakistan.
not just anti-Islamic, they're anti-human. These people.
Right.
I mean, Islam is a paradigm that is very high in its true reality. But these people are anti-human. It's not just Islam, and because even at a certain point in the past, the lowliest of Muslims, the one that was not completely observant, had a heart, had a conscience. Was moved if he saw another fellow Muslim in a bad state. But these people don't. They don't feel anything. They have become that unfeeling, satanic kind of being that only thinks about itself, that is perpetually in that state of the nafs al-amara bil-su, and has gotten fat and greedy in that paradigm within itself with no way out. And it is now harming others around itself, whether it through the hoarding of wealth or whether in the way that it unleashed these Islamist takfiri death squads on the Middle East during 2014 to 2018, etc. So these people are kuffar in every conceivable sense of the word. They are kuffar. They are enemies of God. They're muharrib lillah, and they have to be stopped in one way or another. Unfortunately, the Muslimin don't seem to have woken up or don't see it expedient yet, to basically rise up against these criminals and these shayateen, to do something about it. Number one, to take back the two holy shrines from the hands of these corruptors of the earth.
Yes.
But we are going on another trajectory. Inshallah, that issue, by the grace of the Almighty, will eventually solve itself, and it will, inshallah ta'ala. But here's what I want to tell anybody who wants to enter the FSO. One of the plans is to follow. Eventually, once we consolidate ourselves and properly set ourselves, we will guarantee to every person who enters the Nur FSO, once the funds are established, lifetime health and mental care, food and shelter for life. Provided that you enter sincerely, we will take care of you. No religious organization does that. But this is what I'm setting on the table. because the society out there is basically taking these amenities out of the hands of people. We will provide it. And as a community, as an ecclesia, we will build this green socialist spiritualized society ourselves with our own hands. I am not promising utopia. I am not promising an easy path. Through hard work and everybody pulling their weight, we will get to that destination guaranteed, because heaven itself is behind us and we are doing khair, we're doing good for other beings. But this is my guarantee to those who in the future decide they want to come to us. We will give you these things.
Ameen, Sheikh. And that is the thing. You have an implemented plan with the Nur FSO and everything we have discussed here. And if all of us collectively come together, all brothers and sisters of a good heart, good conscience, and with the right intention, then we can move mountains all over the world. And that's exactly what we're aiming for, what we're hoping for. And for those brothers and sisters that are in America that are watching this, if you have any questions of the Nur FSO, or if you wish to join and make your pledge, please get in touch with me, get in touch with Sheikh Wahid Azal. And we are in a position where we want like-minded brothers and sisters. And inshallah, as time goes on, after days, weeks, months, years, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And those ideas that the Sheikh is teaching us, not only in the commandments and the spiritual practices, became a common household thing. And that's the only way we're going to be able to turn this ship around. Otherwise, the way that I'm looking out here and the way that people are just acting with each other, we really got to do something. And the time is now.
And time is now, inshallah. And God is with us.
Inshallah, Sheikh. That's right. That's absolutely right. Any closing thoughts before we conclude?
No, that's about all I need to say for this one.
All right. So everyone, thank you for joining us for part 16 of my series of dialogues and conversations with Sheikh Wahid Azal of the Nur FSO. And until next time for part 17, Nur alaikum and Bismillah.
Ya Nur.